everybody. Welcome to the Kurt Johansson Show. It's Kurt. Today, I've got Too Cruel Tyson Taylor with me. Tyson, thanks for coming on.
No, thank you for having me, and congratulations on the award-winning podcast now.
The award-winning, I think the best interview series and the best overall podcast with the SWN, which was... It was a good feeling, like with people reaching out and voting and things like that. There was some good shows up there, and SWN up in Scotland are doing great things. I believe I'm guest appearing on their show in February.
Oh, cool! So,
yeah. It'll be fun to chat to them, but yeah, award winning now.
Yeah, and that's the door opening to, as you say, to new things, and you're gonna go up to SWA and stuff like that. So it's the beginning, isn't it, of something really good for you?
Yeah.
No, made up.
I know, thank you.
Funnily enough, come across your podcast because you had Joey Seven on.
Yeah.
And someone mentioned, Joey Seven spoke about you on. I said some good things. So we'll have a look. So I fast forwarded to see what he said, and I said, "Oh, that was nice." And I said, "I kind of like this conversation we're having," and I always like how to hear people's stories in wrestling.
Yeah.
So I'll have a go with it. And then I saw that one, and then Dean's come on, and then you started to put them on. I said, "You know what? These are quite they're very interesting to watch. They're easy. I watch and listen. They're easy to listen to because they're just stories of wrestling. And obviously, we're both fans of wrestling. And any story about wrestling, I'll listen. It's literally it's wrestling. Anything else, talk about politics or stuff, I haven't got a clue. But talk about wrestling, and you've got me. You've literally got me. It's like kids with Peppa Pig. So
yeah. Nice. It's overwhelming, people like yourself, and when, with Joe Redman as well, somebody that's listened to a few of the shows and then suggested other guests and stuff like that. I always find it quite surreal that it's becoming a show that people in the business enjoy listening to stories of the buddies and stuff like that and start suggesting. So, it's appreciated, and you've always been one where, whether it's somebody locally that you work with or somebody further overseas, you're always sharing the content and just trying to promote. So I appreciate it, and we'll get to do it ourselves right now.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Yeah, this is actually, funny enough, this is my first podcast I've ever done.
Oh wow!
So yeah, this is kind of like a big step for me as well. Hopefully, it's kind of one of these things where these type of things, as you say, it's award-winning, and you've got people, eyes and ears on it. It could do a lot for me is trying to get my name out there, because I have been doing this a very long time, but my name isn't out there as much as, people who've been doing it 3 years, 4 years and stuff like that. So it's things like this that's really going to help me try and get my name out there.
I think that's why I do it. For me, I like looking at different wrestling scenes, hence the whole Scandinavia stuff. I've been looking into various different countries across Southeast Asia, but then I'll have a look at the different wrestling platforms in the UK that maybe not get the credit they deserve, especially with people that work on the All-Star run, where you do genuinely have some of the best wrestlers in the world, but because they're not working for this internet this internet audience and this internet company, it gets underappreciated. I always remember with NXT UK when that first came about, and when you've got people like Jack Stars and maybe like Saxon Huxley, where they may not have gone down the Rev Pro or Progress route, and people are like, why are these on there instead of this person? And then you just start seeing just how fundamentally sound these people are, and that's why they're there.
It's I always kind of see the end, especially with All Star, it is literally, and this is not me just being biased towards All Star, it is literally the best of the best. That is the gold standard of wrestling, and it is a bit of a shame that there's not a bridge between indie wrestling and All Star. There's a divide there. I don't know where it comes from. It's maybe bitterness from people who want to work for All Star and can't, so they kind of poo-poo it more, and think that's the easiest way, or it's just we don't understand. It's not we, it's just they don't understand how All-Star works. The All-Star crowd doesn't understand how the indie crowd works. There's the two different styles, basically. So sometimes he can be misunderstood, but people cross over all the time, and you've just said Jack Starr there. He's one that he can do. He does independent and he does all star, and he slots right in because he is that good. So, and this is why, and I'm probably one of the people who's kind of fell victim to the whole all star being away from the independent series. Is I've been doing this 11 years.
Wow.
So I've been a pro. I started training 14 years ago, and then I've been working for 11 years. But I mean, those 11 years, it wasn't a solid out 11 years. There was when you first, especially in All Star, because it's so hard to get into the main roster and to be on all the time. They'll throw you can get a couple of shows, maybe your first 2 or 3 years you're probably refereeing more than you're wrestling.
Yeah.
Well, but you're more than welcome to go all the shows. You got to help with the ring. When I first started wrestling, or when I first started training and I was refereeing, I was like, the people I was watching was like James Mason, Drew McDonald, Drew McIntyre, who was Drew Galloway at the time. Sheamus was there just before he got signed. Dean Allmark, Robbie Dynamite, Tony Spitfire, Robbie Brookside, Frankie Sloan. These are all like the big, Robin Lakeem. These are all veterans even back then. So imagine, and this was 13 years ago. These are gold standard, and that's where I got to sit and watch. Probably most weekends. And there was times where Mason Ryan was there before he went to WWE, and it was basically I was just sitting there and I would just watch the matches, and I'd basically just be the lackey in a they were never mean to me or anything like that. It was just get them some water. If they wanted something from the shops, I had to run and go and get them something from the shops, and it was I was doing the ring. And I was cleaning up afterwards and stuff like that, and that's how it started. And that now is kind of like you don't really hear of that anymore. There's people who are just the refereeing, and then that's how you learn. And then you're cleaning up after people. You're doing you're carrying the bags, you're carrying in the merch, and you really are starting at the bottom, and you've got to work your way up. And if you fall short once, you just get knocked right back down. And that's literally how it was. Very cutthroat when I first started, because the training school had some really good students, and I mean really good students. We had Ben Levy, we had Luke Hardy, there was Lightning Kid, TNT, Air Anderson. These had all been there before I started, and there was only one spot for a student on the show, maybe two, and they wanted it, and they were going to make sure that you didn't get it. And it wasn't like in a bad way. It was like a healthy thing. It was like, I want that spot because I want to be on the show. And then you had to be like, no, I want that spot, so I want to be on the show. So you were kind of trying to outdo each other in training, and also like kind of, not like kissing arse, but, helping out like at the shows. You were the first one there to pick up the boards, or the first one there to pick up the posts and stuff like that.
Work ethic.
Yeah, that's what you had to do. You had to. The funny thing is when I first started, I was absolutely dreadful, and I mean terrible. It took me 3 years before they even let me in the ring. I was refereeing a lot, but I was just dreadful. I was absolutely dreadful, and the only reason why I got the spot, and it was at a Butlin show, and I didn't even know. I thought it was refereeing, and I was going down with Tish, who's Brian's daughter, and she said, "You're going to be refereeing. Bring your stuff, but bring your gear just in case." All right, okay, yeah. And we were driving down. It's like a Skegness, Butlins, it's a couple hour drive. Halfway there, she said, "Oh, by the way, you're not refereeing, you're wrestling." And she said, "And the reason why I said you were refereeing and not wrestling is because you might have got scared and chickened out. Well, we're halfway there now, so you got no choice." I said, "All right." Okay. And she said, "The reason why I picked you, my dad wanted so and so to go, but the reason why I picked you is because you're the first guy who's putting that ring up at training, and you're the first guy taking it down. So that work ethic definitely helped me get that first shot, and that was it. It just wanted a foot in the door, and it's just like with this now, with me, with your podcast, trying to get my word out there. All I want is a chance. That's it.
Yeah.
I only need one chance, and I know for a fact I can knock it out the park.
Do you think the work ethic's changed a lot? Like, I think some people can get on shows a lot quicker now, especially if they can do that one fancy spot, especially with the independent side. Like, I always remember, to relate to yourself for doing all the graft and things like that, I was an apprentice at Hull City to do coaching, and we all got told, right, nobody's getting kept on. End of the year, nobody's getting kept on. We've got nothing for you. The apprenticeship above had been cut. We don't want to take anybody on as like full-time staff. And we were still contracted for a couple of months. And a lot of the lads, like, I'm not going out there coaching. Like, I'm getting an apprenticeship wage, doing the same thing as the coaches that are getting £12, £15 an hour.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm still going to go out. And I took over somebody's, I think it was like mixed sports. So it wasn't even coaching football that day. I was doing rounders and everything with like some of the younger groups. And there was only one more person out of 12 of us, I think it was, that came out to do the job that was there to do. And then at the end of it, a month later, it was like, right, and they did it in front of everybody. It was like, Paul, you're staying on. Kurt, you're staying on. Yeah. And everyone kicked off. But you said you weren't, like, you said don't want anything. I was like, well, you didn't go out and do the camps. He was like, well, what's the point? Because we didn't have anything. I was like, yeah, but these two did it, still knowing they didn't have anything. I was like, and that's why they've got something.
Yeah, and that's a lesson for everyone. And that's work ethic, but it's also professionalism at the same time. You know, yeah, you're going to lose your job in 3 months, but they're still going to pay you for them 3 months. So you've still got to do that job, whether you're got the job at the end or not.
Yeah.
That's not the case if you're going to lose your job. You know, it's being a professional at the same time there as well.
Exactly, and I think I stayed there for about 3.5 years until I thought, right, that's enough. I want to go do something different. Yeah. But I do think that's the case. I think with social media is great in getting people out there, and I think with the culture of GIFs and short videos, that helps people get noticed. But I also think people bitch and complain quite a lot on social media these days.
The thing with the little video snaps as well is people are trying to get this shock factor of a video. It's like, you know, you see guys who are jumping off balconies and stuff like that. Like, that's not what the wrestling business needs. Yeah. Like, you may get bookings for it, but they're going to expect you to jump off balcony. And then once you've exhausted jumping off the balcony, like, oh, there's a jumping off the balcony guy, they're going to look and go, right, what's he going to do next? Yeah. And they're probably going to expect, are you going to jump off something even higher then? And then when you've exhausted all that, they're going to want you to do something else. And that's kind of like what the fans, I've always thought, like, the fans have been quite spoiled. And I think we listen to the fans a little bit too much. Obviously, they are the fans, and that's what, and we need them. And it's that, you know, the fans and the wrestlers, there's a connection there, probably more than any of us thought. But, you know, sometimes you've got to not give what the fans want to make them want it even more. And the best example I can say, and through this podcast, I am always going to go back from The Rock and the Stone Cold Steve Austin, that era, because that was my era, and they were successful. So there's no point in saying, like, you know, people who are going to listen to this and go, "Oh, well, that was the olden days," but they were successful. It doesn't matter. Whether it was the olden days or not, these are successful people. And I remember sitting down, and it was like Triple H against The Rock, and I would sit down and go, I want The Rock to win the title tonight. And he didn't. Most of the time, The Rock got his ass kicked half the time. And it made it so much worth watching him get his ass beat months and months and months when he finally did win the title. And that's the thing, is imagine if, you know, they were watching that and The Rock's getting the biggest pops and everything. And soon as they see that The Rock's getting, you know, all this popularity, they take the belt off Triple H and they put on The Rock. Yeah. And then the fans will be happy, but for how long? Yeah. You've given what they want straight away. You need to like, it's kind of like, you know, when you know, if you were ever starving in the desert, you're dying for food, And then when you get it, you appreciate you've got the food. You're like, oh, finally I've got food. That's exactly what it is. It's like, and when he got the title, it was like I appreciated it then. Like I was like jumping up and down and running around, and sometimes that you've got to do it at the right time rather than doing it at like the right time for the wrestler or the company rather than doing it for the right time for the fans. If you get what I mean, you'll never lose the fans unless you do. You really piss them off, but the fans will always be there, and they know that you've got a bad guy and a good guy, and the bad guy's always going to foil the good guy, and that's the case. But you could keep that going, and they'll wait because they know it's going to come that good guy's going to win, and then when it does, it's just sweeter for them, I think.
Yeah, like even I think the closest we've had to the modern day for that would be Daniel Bryan. When Bryan got, and even Kofi when they got their Mania wins and it finally happened. And I think a lot of people do complain. I think fans get given too much like control, I guess. That they dictate a lot of stuff, and some companies will change the bookings, and I think that's why a lot of the time WWE will do what they want, because everyone's like, TV figures are down, blah 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 blah. But social media, they're still doing great stuff, and they're still making money. And it's like the whole Goldberg thing. Everyone's like, we don't want Goldberg. His YouTube video smashed every other bit of footage on YouTube that was related to wrestling. And it's hard to say, but who was it that was training you from the beginning?
So my trainers were Robbie Dynamite and Dean Allmark. They were the two, and I mean, like, I'm always going to be biased towards them. Imagine them being your trainers, them two people, like. And the funny thing is I'd never. There's people that have come into that training school and say to Dean like, "Oh, when I was like 9, like I watched you at this All-Star show." The only wrestling I watched was WWF. That was it. I didn't know. I knew about WCW because in school you had WWF and WCW, either like WWF or WCW. I didn't know anything about New Japan, ECW. I didn't know. I was just a complete WWF nerd. That's all I was. And obviously I'd seen posters around about wrestling, but I didn't know who Dean Allmark was. He was just, the trainer. And it was only obviously as the years go by that you go to shows and you started realizing just how good these two guys were. I mean, Robbie, he was fit. He looked physically like a monster.
Yeah.
So straight away, it was like, right, well, that guy could probably eat me. So I'm going to listen to everything that he says. And it was he had this kind of mix. It was funny. So I'll tell you the story from the start. So it was me and my friend, and we just love wrestling. We were wrestling mad ever since we were kids. We used to love wrestling, and there was an old like sports center, and I mean old. This place, like, don't think of it like a sports center now. There was like something in the paper when I was a teenager that they found rats in the pool like that. There was paint falling off the walls. I'm surprised it's still standing now. It was just this rundown building that they called the sports center. And we drove past once because I think it was like 17, and I just saw this big canvas. It's like this big canvas poster, and it said like wrestling here, but it had a guy like kind of like a cartoon picture of a guy jamming another guy, but they were both in like amateur wrestling gear. So me and my friend were like, "Oh, like they do wrestling there," and we said we should go. So, all right, a couple of weeks, every weekend, I'd say to my friend, "Do you want to come?" No, I can't this weekend. So in the end, I said, "You know what? Okay, I'm just going to go on my own." And I kind of thought that it was amateur wrestling. So I thought, well, Kurt Angle was an amateur wrestler and he got into it. So this is probably a good start. And as soon as I walked through the door, there's a big, massive wrestling ring in there. And I was like, it's actually wrestling. It's not like the amateur wrestling. I've come across a pro wrestling school that is literally a mile away from my house. I was like, what on earth is this? And I mean, the place was horrible, but it was our training school, and I walked in and Dean's there and Tish was there, Dean's wife, and I met them and Robbie, and then that was it. Then it was just the way. I was just hooked straight away. The the first lesson I only watched, and I didn't have any stuff on. I only had I was dressed in normal clothes because I was only just watching, and I ended up sitting down because I was going to watch for a bit, and I had to leave because I wanted to get in there that bad, but it didn't have any gear with me. So I said, right. And Joe, when you still ever been like that excited that you can't sit down, and I was like that in the chair. I said, right, I'm gonna have to leave. After 5 minutes, I had to leave because I was that excited and I was kicking myself that I said I should have just joined today. Now I've got to wait till next week to do this. And then soon enough, next week come, I got everything and went straight down. And
How did you find it then? Because earlier you told the story of like the first 3 years you were terrible. So how did you find the training side of it? Because as well, Dean mentioned prior to his recording like your incredible weight loss story as well. Was that through wrestling?
well, I kind of the weight loss was kind of come a couple of years before wrestling. So, and it was just kind of one of those things where I was really overweight. It's probably like 21 stone, maybe heavier. And, at like 14, 15, you shouldn't be that weight. So and it just got to the point where I was just kind of sick of feeling like that I was nothing. So I just said to my parents, I'm going to start at the gym. And they said, all right, okay. So it was kind of I was kind of losing weight. And then I come across the wrestling. And that's when I kind of went, right, I'm going to need to really lose some serious weight here. And if you look back on YouTube, I've got there's loads of matches I've got where like 10 years ago. And you can literally see, I'm like a chunky little, so-and-so in him. And you can, and if you look at the ones that'll be like, 10 years ago, and then you look at one that's 7 years ago, then you can see the transformation. So stepping in and seeing how everyone was, I thought to myself, right, I really need to lose weight here. And then it was only when I thought losing weight's going to be enough. And then it was only when I started really getting on shows and that, and I was looking at other guys, who was standing there. And there was another guy called Ringo Ryan, and he was like,
he's in New Zealand now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's great. Like he's really helped me a lot. I've got a lot to owe to him, and he was like this kind of skinny kid when he first started. He's probably like one of the most successful students that's come out of that school, and so he was on a lot of shows. And then just one day, I hadn't seen him for like a year or so because he had left the school. He didn't even have to come back to school. He'd graduated, quote unquote. And he was on the road all the time. He was one of the all-star guys then. And just one day come in and he just looked like a tank. And I was like, whoa, like, he's changed his body and he's on all the shows. And then I was like, right, I've lost the weight now. Now I need to put it back on. But it needs to be muscle this time. So that's when I literally just started like hitting the weights and trying to get as big as possible. And that's probably when I said like the first couple of years of me wrestling, that was probably the reason why I wasn't getting on so many shows, is because I'd lost a lot of weight, but it did look like shit. Like I didn't look like a wrestler at all. I had really old dingy gear and like I remember my first boots I bought them off a student for $5, and I had to tape them up, with duct tape and they were falling apart. So imagine being a person, a paying customer, and this is a kind of advice to anyone who's being a wrestler. If you don't think that going to gym and looking like a wrestler is not important, sit in the seat of a paying customer. They've paid money. They've got the poster. The poster always has the top guys on the top. Our posters would have like, it had Joel on, and it had Mason Ryan, and big fellas like that on it.
Yeah.
And then here's me coming out. They've paid the money. They brought the kids, and then here's me coming out with, some singlet that I bought off
in the opener.
yeah, and elbow pads that were far too big for me and stuff like that. They must have been thinking, what on earth is this? So it kind of got to the point where I was like, right, I need to look professional now. I've got my foot in. Let's really start looking like a wrestler now. And that's advice that I'd give to anyone out there. If you don't think that going to the gym and getting big and looking like a wrestler isn't important, then you clearly don't get wrestling, basically. I mean, you get these guys who are out of shape, but they're like huge. Like, look at Viscera. Like, I mean, that guy, if I wouldn't want to pick on him, like, he could wrestle me to the ground and he could probably put me in his backpack and walk around with me in it. So it's one of them where there's a healthy balance between being looking like, shit and looking like a wrestler.
Yeah, and I think for those that don't look like those body guys, if you're not going to look the part, then you've got to be incredible at everything else you do.
Yeah,
So,
you really have.
for example, like with Kevin Owens and Samoa Joe, they're probably two of the bigger ones. But everything they do when inside the ring,
Yeah.
make you, oh, actually, no, this guy would probably
Yeah.
kick my ass in a fight.
Because you can get those guys that, like, I mean, you can see them in bars and pubs and that. They could be these, like, guys that kind of, like, look out of shape. But they'll beat, the shit out of you. The tough guys. And I remember watching Samoa Joe when he was in TNA, and there was never once where I looked at him and said, "You don't look like a wrestler. You look like shit." It was even like with Kevin Steen. I remember seeing him in a singlet, and I was like, "Look at this, just this fat guy in a singlet." And it was only when he come into, like, he had like his t-shirt on and his pants. And I said, and he had, like, his arms looking up. And I said, "You know what? There you go. He looks like a wrestler. He looks like a wrestler there." So, but there's where you say is you can't just walk in and think that because you dress like Kevin Owens, you are Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens has got an aura about him that he gets away with it, and only few will get away with it. It's not a free pass for everyone that looks like Kevin Owens. For some reason, it's like you look at kind of like this, the smaller type of wrestlers, like Rey Mysterio. Like, obviously he was like super jacked, but he was like really small. And WWE have tried to bring in like small lucha guys like him, but no one was like Rey Mysterio because you can't get it. You've just got to have it, and that's what Kevin Owens and Samoa Joe are. They just have it, and not everyone can have it, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. So going back to like Robbie and Dean, then, what was you learning from each of them? Like, what was the best thing you've been getting from Robbie, and what was the best thing from Dean? And one of the reasons I ask as well is I always joke with my guests. 9 times out of 10, Dean Allmark gets mentioned in one of my podcasts.
Yeah.
Like, from the guests, like, even if they've not trained with him. Like, I interviewed somebody from Australia, and he's like, "Oh, I'd love to come to the UK and train under Dean Allmark."
Yeah.
Just like, and I think here you are, like his protege, I guess, like
Yeah.
from that. So, what was it like training under them two?
Well, I mean, I'm always going to be biased to Robbie and Dean, but I think Dean is the best wrestler in the world. And the reason why is because you can get people that just, Dean would be the first one to say he's not the biggest guy, but like he just he's just so believable in what he does and everything that he does, and people just love him. And it's funny when we'll be out and about and people are like, "Hi, Dean," and I'm just literally like, "You are literally a living baby face." He's just the people's person, like, quote unquote people's champ. Like, he is. He's just got this thing, and his mind for wrestling is just absolutely unbelievable. Like, there's finishes we've come up with, or I've wanted to do this, and he's incorporated in the match. And I mean, I've probably had about I couldn't even count. I'm going to say something like 300 to 500 matches with Dean, and it's literally like it's just like water. It's like so fluid. There's nothing's missed. He's just literally has the magic of wrestling. He is, like, for me, he is just the best in the world. He really is. And he could go in there with a broom and tear the house down. It'll be the match of the night. And there's times where we've been on shows and, Dean's been on it and he said, "Hey, there's this guy I've got, would you put him on the show?" He said, "Yeah." and they put me and Dean on, and the promoters come back and on that match for me was match of the night. You stole the show with that match, and I've obviously putting that match together. I've had my say of like, oh, can we try this? But it's just Dean's the architect. He's the architect. He's the builder. He's the painter. He's the window fitter. He's the toilet fitter. He's everything. He's just this whole package. And people are probably going to think that I'm biased about it, but I've seen him firsthand, probably more than most people, and I just think he's literally he was born to be a wrestler, and if he was given the chance, he could probably be the biggest star, just like Daniel Bryan and stuff like that, because he just has it. And it's one of those things where he has it. Like I said before, you can't get it. You've just got to have it. He's got it, but he's got more of it than anyone else. So it's kind of he was incredible to sit under that learning tree. To be fair,
I'm glad you mentioned like the Daniel Bryan comparison as well, because when I do think of Dean, and if there was somebody like him across the pond, it would be Bryan, where they are so innovative. Like they create moves that other people will do. He doesn't look and be like, oh, that's cool, I'll do that. He, like you mentioned, you can't learn it, you just have it, and he has the thought process to come up with some weird holds. Like you see it all over his social media where it'll be, I tried this today, and I'll be watching, I'm like, one, how the fuck did you do that?
Yeah.
And two, how the fuck do you even come up with that? Like,
he's kind of like, for me, he's kind of like Neo in the Matrix. Like like everyone's working in the box of the Matrix, where he knows how to go outside, because there's just stuff where he'll just grab someone, he'll go, hey, come in, he'll have like their arm, or he'll take the head, or he'll take the leg, and then he'll do a couple of shifts round, put his arm over, maybe do a roll and be like, right, and then he'll go, all right, okay, and then he'd ask like someone, can you record this for me? And he'll just come up with something, and you're just like, wow, it's just, talk about someone that knows not just his body, but everyone else's body as well. And I think that's definitely something as well that you need to know who you're on with as well. And he can look at someone and go, right, I know what type of match we're going to have today, without even speaking to the guy. And yeah, that's just, for me, he's like a wizard. He really is.
what about Robbie then?
Oh, Robbie was the so what it was is, so you'd have Robbie in the morning, and then you'd have Dean in the afternoon, or there'd be two separate classes. So what you'd do is you'd have Robbie on the mats. He's doing all the mat wrestling, and that's his style. And it was definitely, there was a hard initiation in that wrestling school, because we weren't bumping in the ring, we were bumping on mats. And I mean, these mats, you might as well just been bumping on concrete. That's how it felt. And we were doing slams, we were doing suplexes, we were doing everything on these mats. And then in the afternoon, now that you've battered and bruised, you'd go in there, and Dean would be teaching the flary stuff, like the up and overs, the spots and stuff like that. That's what he would do. So there's that. It was yin and yang, and you put them together, and you've got everything that you need in wrestling. It was like you had a full library of wrestling with these two guys, and there was no gaps in the wrestling. You could if there was something that Dean didn't know, there was something that Robbie knew, and if there was something that Robbie didn't know, Dean knew, and it just fit like a key in a keyhole. There was no gaps. You were going to learn absolutely everything that you needed to get on them, to start being a pro. But you had to prove yourself. You really did have to prove yourself. And Robbie was kind of I was very scared of Robbie, because he would be the guy who, if you were doing something wrong, he'd tell you, and he would probably not tell you in a good way. He'd be very blunt with you. And this is what I feel as though now is with students in wrestling schools, is that, and because sometimes I'll, full circle, Dean will have one class and I'll have another. Yeah. And I don't mean to be rude when I say stuff, but I'm just telling it like it is. I'm not trying to pussyfoot around anyone. if I'm telling you that you're doing something wrong, like if you're gonna do something wrong, I'm gonna tell you, and it might be hard to hear, but it's what you need to hear. So, and that's how Robbie was. It was like, you could, if you've done something wrong, we'll tell you. And with those people who, you'd do something and he'd say it, then you'd never see them again. But well, that's it. If you can't get over that first hurdle, then you probably don't deserve being in that ring anyway. So that's what I was taught, is like, you're going to get blunt answers, and sometimes it would sting you, but it's either what are you going to do? You're going to quit, or you're going to learn.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it was. And I think that's what's missing now with wrestling schools, is it's not a social club. We're trying to build wrestlers here. And like, we had fun. It wasn't like, it wasn't like boot camp or anything like that. We had fun, but they were training people to work for Brian Dixon. And if you went up to them standards, then you could come and pay your money and still be here, or you had people who left and obviously went to other wrestling schools and liked it there because their teacher was lying to them because they wanted the money. The money was never they didn't want to bring, we'll have 25 students here and that's more money for us. No, they were like, right, we can start off with 30 and we'll end up with 6. Yeah. But that's fine. We've got 6 guys who really want to be here. And you'd see a lot of people come and go in that school and probably go to other schools and stuff like that. And some you just wouldn't see. And it was probably because they just couldn't swallow the pill of, you need to learn this. It's not just going to come overnight. And yet maybe you've been watching wrestling since you could crawl, but it's different. This ain't WWF, this ain't WCW. We're training people to work for All Star Wrestling, which is the biggest company in Europe.
Exactly. And even if it was one of those, though, at the end of the day, I don't think Conor McGregor got up in the morning and was like, you don't tell me I'm fighting wrong, I know how to fight, and then just walks in. It has to be getting told no, and it'll be, by the time people are listening to this, it'll be out, but for yourself, I've got an interview with Sheikh Al-Sham. I was speaking to H, and that comes out tomorrow, and we were speaking about a lot of stuff in terms of whether it's religion or culture, and one of the cultures we spoke about is just the people's, I guess, reaction and stuff like that. I think Tyson Dukes posted something on social media about it where people go after a match and they care about what somebody on Twitter thinks rather than the promoter.
Yeah.
I think that's essentially what you're getting at. And myself, whenever I do anything in life, whether it's this, whether it's work, my first question is, what didn't you like, or what did I do wrong, or what can I improve on?
Yeah.
Because if somebody's telling me, oh, you did this real well, oh, great. But there might be 20 different things that I did wrong, and then I'm never going to get better. So, although it's nice to get the compliments of that was class,
you
still need to learn what you're doing wrong, otherwise you're not going to develop at all.
And that's when I kind of started to realise that, like, Robbie wasn't this big scary guy that I should have been scared of. He was telling me, because I seen him like talk to guys who were like, terrible, and he'd go, "Oh, what do you think of this, Robbie?" And he'd go, "Yeah, that was fine." And then I'd go, "Oh, what do you think of this?" And he'd go, "Right, you're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong. You need to change this. Don't do that." And I was like, "Bloody hell!" Like, the other guys was awful, but it's the fact is, like, he didn't have respect for the other guy, so he's just going to tell him what he wants to hear, because he doesn't matter. He saw something in me, and he was like, right, the other guy's lost cause. Yeah. Here's the guy who could really probably do something, and he's got the right attitude for it. So I'm going to tell him straight, because I think he's going to be able to deal with it. And I've had times, I mean, the first couple of years, probably like the first 5 years, I was getting my ass chewed out all the time. And I mean, you're the drizzling shit, you're this, you're that. I remember probably for all these like dressing downs that I had, and it just made me learn and come back better. And it's kind of like this thing of like, try and teach me science and I don't remember anything, but like, everything that I've been taught in wrestling, it just sticks with me. So it's kind of like that thing where that's wrestling's like the thing that I just care about more than anything. And I remember this is like how blunt like people would be. I won't say who the wrestler was, but you know, he was a guy who'd been around the business. And I used to wear a singlet, and obviously I was chubby when I first started, you know, being a pro. And Dean was wearing the pleather shorts. And I said, well, I'll wear pleather shorts too. So I remember going on eLucha, if you remember eLucha. There's like a website that you used to buy on. You should be able to buy like wrestling gear on. And it was these, it looked like tinfoil, like these tinfoil silver shorts. And I used to wear a singlet on top. And the reason why I wore the shorts is because I was worried. Because I've got love handles that could cure, you know, the world of war. They're that big. There's so much love going on. And so, and imagine what they're like, you know, back then. They were huge. So I wore these pants thinking, right, they're going to hide my love handles here. So get in the ring, and the match was awful. So come back, and the guy just starts like, this is, you know, you're drizzling shit, you shite, you know, this, that, and the other. That's probably the worst match I've ever seen in my life. And he said, and what is with your shorts? He said, if you're trying to hide that you're fat, it's not. We all know that you're fat. And then it was kind of like a thing where obviously they were very harsh words to tell me, but as soon as I got home, I just binned them shorts. And I said, right, no more shorts, just a singlet. And then it was like, and then that's where it got to the point now where, you know, went down a rabbit hole, and that's, you know, it was stuff like that like to this day. I remember I used to wear elbow pads, and used to wear kick pads, sorry. And for some reason, because everyone was wearing fucking kick pads, you know, that thing. And some guy just like I can't remember who, but we come back, and you know, you're asking around, oh, did you like this, or what did you think of the match? And one guy I just said, what do you think of the match? And he just turns to me and goes, do you kick? And I said, no. He goes, then stop wearing fucking kick pads. And then that was it. Then just took the kick pads off, and that was it. To the point where it's like, right now, and it just literally stripped it, you know, from these little conversations that I had. And it wasn't just like gear, it was like everything. It was like, why are you doing this? Stop doing this. You're moving like this. You know, why did you, you know, say this? There was another one where I used to, the referee, you know, you'd be in the corner, and the referee would be like, you know, get out the corner. I go, shush, ref, shush. And a guy come up to me, it was Robin Lakeem actually. And he said, don't tell the referee to shush. He said, tell the referee to shut up. He said, because you're a villain. Shushing's, it's like what you do to a child. It's like what a mum does to a child. But if you tell him to shut up, that's like what a man says. So, and then that was it. And there was just little things like that that just kind of shaped the way I was. And it did take a while to kind of mold me into, like, you know, someone who is presentable to an audience, basically.
So, when was the first time you thought, like, actually, I've got my shit together then, and you started feeling a lot more confident and becoming the wrestler you are today?
I would kind of say there was a time, I'm trying to think which match it was. It was probably like maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, and it was just, I don't think it was kind of like one of those like ding moments. It was just kind of, people just started shouting at me less. and stuff like that, and you know, people started, you know, saying less to me and giving me less advice on stuff, and you know, you get someone and you go, like, you know, probably like James Mason, and you go, no, you know what, Terence, like, you know, for you that was an all right match there, which for James to say that, it's not, he's saying it in a funny way, of like, kind of like, you know, that was all right there. And that was kind of like one of those things. I started coming out the matches less going, oh, why did I do that? Or, oh, we did this, and oh, I missed that, and oh, I made a twat myself doing that. It was like, it just kind of, it was gradual to the point where it just, it didn't come right away. It just clicked over time. It was like those 3 years of me of me training. I was just awful. I remember like dropping people on their heads, and I remember doing a superplex, and like I just tried to get him over, and then I ended up DDTing him and stuff like that, and And there was this one guy. We used to play football after training, and this is when I knew that I was terrible and I really need to get me act together. Because another student, as we were warming up for football, he turned around to me because he'd never played football with me before, and he goes, "Terence, is your football skills as good as your wrestling skills?" And then like a couple of like the students started laughing, so it was like, "Oh, I'm shit. I'm the jabroni here." I said, "Well, that needs to change very quickly." And that was like, yeah, it did. I just changed everything, and I just kind of, I don't know, just focused in on it more then. But there's like them type of things. People run away from them things, but I face everything head on like that. That was just fire for me. That was just like a piece of coal. Like, right, that's on a fire. You know, you're fat in your your shorts, right? Coal on the fire. You're the drizzling shit, right? Coal on the fire. You know, everything. It was just a piece of coal. And the more it was, and you know, you can't light a fire with one piece of coal, and you can't light a fire with no coal. So that was kind of what it was for me. It was just little bits that just, and then it just lit this, the fire, and then I just got it. Then it's one of those things where I don't think you never fully learn wrestling. It's just you get to the point where you're not as shit as you were before. Basically.
So now that, again, like all the pieces are together, then for anybody listening that may not have seen like your style, and try and describe like who is Tyson Taylor and what should they expect in the ring? Because I know you're going to be like you're going as Too Cruel. Like, get into all that.
Well, basically, what it is I had this whole feeling that I was going to be the second coming of The Rock. That was my thing. I was just the second coming of The Rock. That was my gimmick. I'm going to be this big, massive baby face, and it. I found out very quickly that was not the case. What I wanted and what was going to happen were two very different things. So as I started going on, I started. I was doing All Star, and then I've said, right, I've seen like other wrestling, companies, and I'd email them and say, hi, I'd like to be on your show and stuff like that. And people say, oh, well, I'll let you know. And, oh, well, we don't pay in our shows and stuff like that. And I'm not a big fan. I don't think anyone should wrestle for free, because at the end of the day, if you're wrestling on a show for free and someone drops you on your head and you're paralyzed for the rest of your life, what have you done it for? You've done it for absolutely nothing. Even if you're getting £10, you still get money. So it was one of those where I was just getting rejected, because no one knew who I was. I was working for Brian, and Brian's a whole different world from the independent world. And I just started getting this like really like it was kind of like a business, but it was more like a chip on my shoulder, like a big massive chip on my shoulder. And so I kind of started veering away from this like kind of like happy sort of thing, to where when I was wrestling, I was like, right, let's use what really annoyed me, and I'll take it out there. So it's funny, when they say like your wrestling personas, you turn up to like 1,000. It really is. It's like I just turned into this guy who's just got this massive chip on his shoulder. I believe that like I can get in there with the best and hang with them. And the fact that like people aren't giving me a chance and stuff like that was like really pissing me off. So I have this thing of, right, when I go out there, if I'm a villain, then I'm going to be the best villain on that show. No doubt about it. I'm not even going to let anyone do it. And it got like that even with wrestling training. I'd get in there, and I remembered like, there'd be people who, independent guys would come on, can I train with, at your school, to Dean, and Dean say, oh, Thingy's coming down today. And I go, right, well, whatever he does, I'm going to try and do. I'm going to try and match him, hold for hold. And it was like that with my matches. I was like, I'm going to go out there, I'm just going to match hold for hold. I'm going to use what I've got in here, this anger. I'm going to take it out there. Yeah. And that's kind of like what my character or like of me. It's not a character, it's me. It's just me in a singlet rather than in a t-shirt. I'm still walking around pissed off with a chip on my shoulder, even when I'm not in the ring. But when I'm in the ring, that's where it gets turned up.
Yeah.
And I won't let anyone outdo me. I won't let anyone outshine me on anything. If you want me to do a job, I'll do the job to the best. Like, I won't do it any better than anyone else. I understand what the rules are as a villain and a babyface. If I'm a villain, I'm not here to sell T-shirts. You're not going to like me. I'm going to rattle I'm going to, have a go at the crowd. I'm going to get them rolled up, because at the end of the day, if I come out, if the fans don't hate me, and the babyface, who comes out before me isn't, he's not shining up, or he's not showing out as much, and they're not liking him, then the match is just going to be awful. It's going to be a good guy that they kind of think's okay, and then they've got me, where I just go out there, I'm going to make sure everyone hates me. They're going to hate me more than they like him. So they're going to hate me that much that I could even be in there with a badger. They're going to hate me that much that they're going to want this badger to beat me. And there's a couple of matches that I've done where I've come out there and I've made sure they've hated me. And the pop from the finish of the match, when the babyface beats me, it's been absolutely deafening. And I think this is what people miss when it comes to like being a villain. Is like, you're a villain. They've got to hate you. You see these flat finishes where the babyface wins and you get like kind of cheers, but if the crowd really hated you, as they should, then that reaction can be like 10 times better.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I'm kind of just this old school villain where, I'm very smash mouthish as well. I've got some big moves in there as well. I can talk on the mic. I can, talk the back legs off a horse. I really can. Give me a mic. I remember one time I was at a show and the guy said, "Oh, could you cuss promo before your match?" I said, "All right, okay." So go through the match. Completely forgot that I had to cut a promo. So when I was sitting there, one of the guys said, "Oh, so what are you saying in your promo?" Just as I was going out, I said, "Joe, what? I haven't even thought of it. I completely forgot I had to. Good job you told me." And I said, "Well, I'm just going to have to do this on the fly, aren't I?" And that's when I went out there and I just literally just talked for, a couple of minutes. And I was like, right, it'd probably help if I can think about these things, but, I can talk, and obviously I'm going to talk myself up, but yeah, I'm just the full package. That's what I think, and that's me. I'm always going to bet on myself in that case. So like, that's basically an advert to anyone, any promoters watching. Is if you want, an old school villain who's going to get you some true serious heat, who can talk on the mic. If you want, to put over a big baby face, put him on with me. I can get them hating me that much that when that guy wins, he's going to be a superstar at the end of it.
I love that. And the reason why I started laughing with like when you're talking about like flat finishes and you've got people villains where nobody really hates them. I remember one show in London. I won't say who they were, or what company, but in that show, there was one match where I think it was like a triple threat, and one of the females that was supposed to be the biggest in the company in terms, for the women's, it was either from the bell, does a running dropkick or running standing hurricane rana to start the match.
Yeah,
but she's the heel and the crowd. And then a little later on in another match, I think a tag match, again the heels start doing standing shooting star presses.
Yeah,
it's like again popping the crowd.
Yeah, It's like you've got to know your lane, and this is what I think where like wrestling is gone a little bit awry now. Is I think it just needs to go back to basics. It just needs to be one guy you like and one guy you hate, or one girl you like or one girl you hate, and have them have a conflict. And it is literally as simple as that. And then you can sprinkle little things on top of that. You can sprinkle the season on the steak. But it is, people are trying to reinvent the wheel here, but it's not. It's like, if you're a villain, then, let people hate you. And if you want to sell T-shirts at the end of it, then hire a guy to sit there and sell your T-shirts for you. you don't have to go out and start sweetening the crowd so they buy a t-shirt. Get someone else to do it. Because I tell you what, Triple H was probably the biggest villain when I was a kid. I had a Triple H t-shirt.
Yep.
So people who think that there's no money in being a villain, there isn't. There's money in being a really good villain. Exactly. And people are too far afraid to go that far over, where me, I'm not. I feel as though if I get given the chance, I could be the biggest villain on the independent circuit. That's how confident I am with my ability to work. Is I know for a fact that I can get anyone to hate me. I remember one time we were doing a lumberjack match, and I was on the lumberjack, but I'd been on before. I'd had a match before it, and I cheated to win. Yeah, this for All Star. It was a famous hall called Rill Town Hall, and this is probably and I'll tell you the story about this is the best match I've ever saw ever, and I mean this is the best match ever. It was Dean Allmark against James Mason, who was a villain, for the All Star Wrestling Super Slam Championship at Rill Town Hall, and you do 6 weeks there. So when you start week 1, you'll probably get like maybe the floors busy. By week 2, you've probably got the floor busy, and then you've got a little bit up top, maybe a sprinkle of some. By the 6th week, you've packed that house up, because there's a story built over the 6 weeks to the big, the last week was the pay-per-view, the pay-per-view show. So it was James and Dean had gone from being, they were both a tag team, so they both had a match. James turned villain. James is a full villain on the last show. It's for the Super Slam Championship. And I'd been on beforehand, and obviously done something, cheated to win or whatever. And Dean gets thrown out, and we're beating, you beating up Dean. And I felt this whack on the back of my head, and I was like, what on earth was that? And as I turned round, it was an old man, and he must have been in his 80s. I mean, the guy's probably not even alive right now, God rest his soul if he isn't. And then he whacks me on the front of the head with his cane. He had a walking stick. I was just like sitting there like that, and there was a guy, Lawrence, who's just goes, and I was like, Lawrence, like, what are you doing? This guy just hit me with his stick twice, and they had to like sit him down, and like that was the heat that I was getting. Is there was old men are willing to sacrifice standing up to hit me over the head with a stick, basically. And I've had people try and climb in the ring and try and get me, and I've had to fight my way out of to get to the back. And I've had kids like pinching at me leg, like pinching at me legs and stuff like that. And that's heat. Like that's I go, it hurts and everything, but I know I'm doing my job right in the fact that they're willing to physically hurt me. That's hatred. That's got to be hatred.
Nah, definitely. And going back to like the merch thing as well, like 9 times out of 10, you've got so many people working merch for. Like I know when I'd help out with NGW and I'd be on their merch trying to sell and things like that. And I always remember I jumped in the car with Nathan Cruz, who is working a couple of WAW dates. And he was like, look, mate, he went, do you fancy a drive, like, weekend of wrestling, and try and help, like, shift some of my merch for me? I was like, yeah, that's fine. And it was just one of those where he didn't have to come out and start sweetening up, like, the crowd. I was there just essentially doing it for him. And I think a bit like you, because whether it's been teaching or coaching football, motivational speaking, like, I know how to talk. So I was just like, right, basically, I always remember flirting with somebody to sell one of his t-shirts.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't know. I was like, you like it when Nathan wears it, don't you? And she's like, oh yeah. I was like, I think it will look just as great on your body as it does his. And why don't you go try it on there? And I guarantee you won't want to take it off when you come back out. So she went, tried it on, came out with the money. I was like, there we go. I just remember on the night Nathan was like,
when Nathan was a villain as well.
Yep.
So if it's done right, and Nathan's one of those people where I remember seeing Nathan very early on, and he was like the prima donna, and I knew straight away like that's a true villain. He really was, and he had the body as well. He kind of reminded me of Triple H. He was the closest I could remember looking and going, that's like Triple H. That he's this big, he's got the body, and fans really hate him, but he can also work. So it was kind of that you hate him, but you can't deny just how good of like a wrestler he was. If you were a fan, it was like that with me when you watch Triple H. You're like, oh, I hate him, but he's so good. Like, and it's one of those things is where people kind of they don't want to go that way. They'd rather sweeten the crowd and get the money that way rather than being like a really good villain to the point where you are undeniable and people are willing to buy your stuff for you. Basically.
So going back to like your All-Star run then, obviously All-Star bringing best of the best, like they're doing the most dates in Europe. Like, what are some of your standout matches, like, or opponents? I know you mentioned Dean, you've wrestled God knows how many times, but who else has been that match where it's like, oh, get to work him tonight, that's going to be fun?
Yeah, I mean,
it's surreal.
Yeah, there was a couple of students that I used to always enjoy working. There was a guy called Carl Turner. He was really good, and I used to really enjoy wrestling him. And but if you go down the list of the people that I've wrestled, I've probably wrestled a lot of people. Like I've wrestled Marty Scale, I've wrestled Mason Ryan, I've wrestled Johnny Storm, Cash Wheeler, big names, El Ligero, Nathan Cruz, Sam Gradwell. I've been around that long, JD, James Drake, and stuff like that. I've been around that long that I literally have, wrestled everyone at least once, or there's a couple of handful of people that I haven't had the chance to wrestle. So I can't really picture. I remember because in my match with Cash Wheeler, I actually beat him. So I always kind of keep that in the side pocket of I've beat a WWF or WWE champion. But yeah, I'd say there was trying to wrap my brain here to think if I can find like a really good match. But I don't know. They've all got their ups and their downs in them, really. But I would probably say there's some ones I've had some good ones with. I did one with Tony Spitfire, and there was a reason, and the reason why this one stands out more than anything is because I'd wrestled him a couple of times, and we just didn't click. We just didn't click, and I think it was because I was, at the time when I first wrestled him, I was so inexperienced.
Was
and
it when
it was on like
drizzling shits?
Yeah, yeah. This was the drizzling shit. No, this is probably when I was just the shit, not the drizzling shit. So we'd have like a couple of matches, and you could tell he wasn't happy with them. So every time it said on the card that I was on with Tony Spitfire, I was like, oh, I'm really, nervous about this one. And it was probably my nerves that were probably why they were so awful. But it was like, maybe like 4 years ago, or I'm trying to think now, it was not that long ago. We were on with him again, and obviously I had, had a couple more years under my belt, and we went out there and we had a great match. And he come back and he said, that's the best match we've ever had. And that for me was progress. They're the type of matches that I put in, in my top matches is the ones where I know when I've come out there, I've made progress from my match before. Or, you can have matches where you go out there and you go, oh, we tore the house down and this, that and the other. They're the ones I forget. There's probably a couple of times where we've had some good matches and tore the house down, but the ones where I know there's been a step forward, they're the ones that I remember more than anything, more than the ones where, you've had like a big reaction at the end.
It's like what we mentioned earlier. It's the same as don't tell me what I'm good at because I'm already good at it. Tell me what I'm like bad at because that's going to move you forward. So the fact that matches where, again, you hated seeing it on the card for you then to be like, actually, that was all right. We can do it again.
Yeah. And it kind of like built me confidence so much. So now, and then obviously we've had a couple of matches now. It's just, there's no conversation afterwards. There's no conversation beforehand. He knows that I can do what he wants me to do. And so that is literally progress for me. That's literally when you know you're starting to get somewhere in the mind of wrestling. Is that you started off with this guy and you've had, the match was awful, and then as you keep going on, it keeps getting a little bit better, and then you get one where you're like, right, there we go, we've hit the nail on the head with that one there.
Yeah, definitely, and it's just frustrating the fact that there's so much talent with All Star, and the fact that you reach out to different companies. I'm like, hey, like, I'm interested. You got anything for me? Like, no, because the fact that they don't know who you are, I can see why it gives you a chip on the shoulder. I think even when I spoke to Screwface, he mentioned something similar.
I don't know, Screwface. Yeah, I love that guy.
But it is frustrating, and the fact that independent companies don't look at what Brian's doing for talent, especially when everybody's like, "Oh, British wrestling's dead. Everybody's signed for NXT UK and stuff like that." And I was like, "Well, there's still so much talent, whether it is All Star or guess what? If you invest in your youth and invest in your academies and training,
Yeah,
build your own stars because."
Yeah. And trust me, if you go to an all-star show, you know that wrestling isn't dead. And I mean the old school. People are talking about, oh well, that old stuff doesn't. That no one wants that anymore. They do, and trust me, because Brian, if you've got 300 people in, that's a bad house for Brian.
Yeah.
We're looking at 700 to 1,000 people, maybe more than 1,000. But you get these independent companies, they can only fit 300 in, and that's like their best. But they're not getting 300 people in. They're probably getting just shy of like 200 or 300. So for people to say that wrestling's dead, go to an all-star show in a theatre, and trust me, it's that old style of wrestling still going strong.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's why WWE look at it, because a lot of the times when there's not wrestling fans in audiences and you can still get a reaction, WWE want people that if somebody's skipping the channel and they're like, oh, what's this? And give it 10 seconds, they want somebody within those 10 seconds to capture it. It's a bit like All Star. Like, from when you're making that entrance in the first, say, 10 to 30 seconds on like that camp run, that's all you've got to impress. Like, if you fuck up within that or don't make that impression, a bit like you mentioned earlier when people see Joel and Mason Ryan on the card and then you came out, say, first, and it was like, wait, this isn't what we're bought. It's about making those impressions. And
Yeah, exactly. And Brian's all about visual. Like, you've got Brian is, he wants you to have a flag. You've got to go out with that flag. I've seen him tear people down. Why didn't you take it? He didn't have a flag. He hasn't got a flag. Why hasn't he got a flag? And when they come out, you should be having a flag. And you kind of think, well, it's only a flag. But if you're like, sometimes when you before your match or you've had your match and you sit there, if you get a tag team and each guy's got a flag on either side, both guys have got a flag either side. It's quite a visual to see, especially if there's different nationalities and they're representing their country. It's a visual. It's a spectacle basically, and they're the type of, and it's only little. It's only a flag, but it's huge.
yeah,
It's massive, and that's these little things that obviously people kind of roll their eyes at and go, "Oh, that's the old style of wrestling." It works, and it's always worked. It's like when you watch a film. It's like you have a good guy and you have a bad guy. It's been like that way forever. It's never going to change. And it's like that with Brian with the flags, and it's good. It's bad guy versus good guy. It's always going to be that, because that's how that's the way it works, and it works that way.
yeah, definitely. And I know, like, regarding like the independent promotions, and I know you wrestled Dean at, was it Koala?
Yeah, Koala Slam. Yeah.
What other like independent companies have you been working for? I know you've got Southwest Wrestling coming up in the Heavyweight Classic where you'll be facing Sheikh El Sham. But what other companies have you been working for independently?
Well, it's a good joke because this is a good. There was one guy that I really wanted to give a lot of praise to, and that's Lewis Rossiter. I don't know if he's running the company anymore, but it used to be called Big League Wrestling.
Okay, yeah.
It was kind of like down south. I think it was in like Somerset, maybe something like that. And he just took a chance. He had a rumble and he needed a guy. And funnily enough, I was actually on a wrestling show, on an all-star show, and he said, and Gangrel was on it, and he said, "Do you think that you could get Gangrel here if we put you on the show? Would you drive him?" I said, "Yeah, of course." So he said, "All right, you're on the show. You don't. We had a show. I think it was like a 12 o'clock show, so we were going to be late." He said, "Don't worry, you two are pretty much towards the end of the rumble. Just get here when you can." He said, "Cool." So me and Gangrel drove up then, and we were in. Gangrel was on, and that was the surprise he wanted. And then he put me on, and then he just took a chance on me. Then it was just every show he put me on. So Lewis, I owe a lot to Lewis because it mustn't have been cheap bringing me down because I was from the northwest and he was down south. So bringing me down all that way sometimes on my own. He wasn't trying to fill my car. One time he had to pick up a bis, and that was probably about it. But and he had big cars. There was one car that was on where he had Pac, Bram, which Bram I've known for years as well. And I've wrestled him a couple of times when he used to be an all-star. MVP was on, Matt Riddle was on. So he didn't need to bring me down. He didn't drive me down. All I was, I must just cost him more money than I was worth. But, I appreciate what Lewis did there. And then a couple of others I've worked for. Trying to think now. See, this is the thing. I haven't really worked for that many.
Of your All-Star schedule?
So the All-Star schedule is pretty. Like last year, I probably had about 200 matches with Brian last year. And, if you ask any independent guy, they ain't doing that. No way. So, and this is the thing is I was begging, promotions to book me on. But then in the last maybe like 4 or 5 years, it got to the point where I didn't even have time to use anyone else.
Yeah.
But I did start working for Ian McGregor, who runs a couple of shows. He runs some really good shows and Welsh wrestling as well. So they're kind of like the three that and it's even to like Ian and Alan Raven as well. Like they took a chance on me, and this is what I'm going to say to any promoter who's on there: when you put me on once, you'll put me on again. Them two did it. I got a chance with McGregor. He said, right, they need an extra guy, and Tony Spitfire got it for me, and then that was it. Then he finished the match, finished the show. He handed me money. He goes, "Are you free every Saturday from now for the next 6 or 7 weeks?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Okay, well, you're on every show." And it was the same with Ravenhill. I tried to get on Ravenhill a couple of times, and then it was just one show. They just needed a guy, and that was it. Then it was. He said, "Right, I've got these. These are my dates. Can you do them?" I said, "Yes, sir." And that was it. And so there's two evidences there of you're going to put me on once, and I guarantee you're not going to be disappointed.
No, definitely. And how do you feel about the the heavyweight classic that you'll be doing with SWW?
I'm really excited about this because these type of things are new to me on the way of, with Brian, you kind of, you got your 5-bout card, and, you could be on second, or you could be on last, or you could be on first. So doing this type of, it's kind of gives you like an insight of, and he doesn't record it. He doesn't film any of these shows. These are going to be film shows. I'm sure there's going to be things I need to learn, things I need to know. So it's kind of like these are the learning curves for me, and it's probably gonna, it's probably not gonna click with me straight away because I'm not used to kind of having cameras on me and having certain cues and times and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to it. I do think I'm up for the challenge. I do think my foundation and the house I've built on top of that, now I'm ready to take it to the next level, and SWW is definitely the next level for me.
No, brilliant. Because I really like your side of the bracket. Like, I guess use a missing piece of the puzzle. Like, I've interviewed the three other guys. Obviously, you've got Eddie Ryan versus Joey Seven, and then yourself and Sheikh El Sham. So if you do get past Sheikh, like, who would you want to be facing in that semi? Would you want to mix up with Joey again, or would you want to be facing Eddie?
It's either or, because I've wrestled Eddie Ryan a couple of times as well, and I know them both very well because I've worked a couple of summers with them, and Eddie is just, he just looks amazing, and in the ring he's amazing as well, and he's a guy who really is, he is really like a people's champion. It's kind of like in the Dean thing of where kids love. I remember we were doing a big league show, and it was me and Eddie Ryan, and you looked in the audience, and there was kids with the Eddie Ryan t-shirts, to the point where it was kind of like if you were sitting in like WWF and it was Johansson 316 t-shirts. And I was thinking, how many t-shirts has he brought with him to the show? Did these kids buy him today, or did they? And he was the first one, he was the first one out, speaking to the fans at the end of the show, and he was the last one to leave, and he had the spread out and everything. So, and his work in the ring is great as well, and he's such a powerhouse. And me and Eddie gelled quite well, so I would like that. Me and Joey, we've only been in tags, but Joey's one of those guys who really has the mind to learn, and he it's that saying, close your mouth and open your ears, and that's what Joey did. And they're the type of people that if I see someone do that, I'll help you every way you can. I'll climb a mountain to make sure that you're getting everything that you should be getting, because he really is a future talent, and he looks amazing as well. He is a babyface in my eyes. He's going to earn some promoter if they let him a lot of money, because there is money in Joey Seven. I do feel that.
Yeah, I think both of them, and I think it's again that old school mentality of just making sure you look like a star. And going back to the Eddie, I always remember, I think it was in the part 2 of the chat, and he was speaking about the WWE experience in Plymouth, and he was facing Saxon Huxley in a dark match. And when his name came up, because he used the generic music, but when his name came up on the board, it was the biggest pop of the night.
Yeah.
And he mentioned Triple H just standing up from his seat and was like, "Who the fuck's this guy?"
Yeah.
And then before he knows it, he's on the next night, but on TV against Fabian Eichner.
Yeah.
And it's that, like, and it's why when people are getting that sort of reaction, whether it's yourself or Eddie or Joel, the fact that every independent company in UK aren't knocking down the door to try and get you guys is, I can't get my head around it.
Yeah, and we're kind of like those people where we've got that mindset where we can relearn things, and I know WWE has its own style, and there's just some people who aren't capable of relearning. Well, you got Eddie Ryan there, he's such a student to the game that he can basically relearn what WWE wants. He's the guy that you want there because, one, he looks amazing, and two, he really can just. He's such a professional. So if they want him to, don't forget it doing it that way, do it this way. He'll do it, and he'll do it, better than anyone. And I think sometimes that's what WWE are looking for. They're like, right, who can we make forget everything that they've learned and teach them our way? Where I think, and sometimes they're looking at him and go, well, he's been around a very long time. He's got himself a big name on the independents. Maybe we want people who are just getting into the business and they're a little bit younger, and we're going to go for them because we can mold them. Eddie Ryan is clay that's already hardened, and it's very hard to mold hardened clay. Where I think Eddie more, if he got signed, he'd be one of the top people for sure. And Joey Seven as well. You know, Joey Seven just starting his career off. He's probably a guy where, given 5 years, he's got, 7 or 8 years under his belt. Then what a guy! Like, if he can get the mind of it, he's just money.
No, definitely. So whether it is like NXT or traveling around, what are your goals left in wrestling?
Well, see, when I was young, it's probably only changed. See, we have a lot of talk of WWE, but my goal isn't WWE. It used to be, but I'm kind of looking at like the lay of the land of and how people are being used or not used or poorly used, or I just don't trust them. I just can't trust them to understand my vision.
Yeah.
And if I was in WWE, my main goal would be right. Like, ever since I was a kid, all I want to be is WWE champion. I get up, and here's another ad for promoters out there of just how hard working I am. I get up at 2 a.m. to go train. So like this morning, I was up at 2 a.m. I went train for 3 hours, cardio, weightlifting, and then I go to work then, and then because I got 2 jobs, so we hit the first job at 5:30 till 8:30, and then after that, the next job is 8:30 till 3:30. And that's my work ethic. It's hard working. So in my mind, it's like I work the hardest, and and if it's not going to pay off, then there's no point in me being there. If I can't go into WWE and be WWE champion, then I'm sorry, but I can't go there I've knowing that I'm fully capable of doing it, but obviously, what it's like. It's kind of like they have their people,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to be able to change their mind. Look at Daniel Bryan at that time when he was at WrestleMania. That didn't come easy for him, and I doubt that that's ever going to happen again. So my goal now is I've changed to kind of Japan's a big one that I want to try. I want to go to Japan. And also, as I said before, where I want to be WWE champion, I've seen so many people hold that, All-Star Wrestling Championship, like some big names, some amazing people. And it's such a prestigious title that's what I want now. I want to be the All-Star Wrestling Champion one day and hold that company on my back. And when I was younger, WWE, but I just can't see that happening, and I don't think I could sit in that company knowing that I couldn't be that. I couldn't be the top guy. So my goal now is to be the biggest name on the independent circuit. Be that big name like Will Ospreay and Marty Scurll and people like that. That's the level I'm looking at. That's the exposure and the stardom that I want, and even more. As I said before, I want to be literally the most hated person on the independents, and I just need that chance. And I know for a fact that if someone gives me that ball, I'm going to run with it, 100%.
Now, hopefully, that'll be something that comes for you. Like getting up at 2 a.m. to go train. Like nobody can fault that work ethic. Like, and as if you're not complaining about not getting opportunities, but then when you look at it, it's like, well, I'm sat at home all the time, or things like that. You're actually out doing the work, doing the graft, and hopefully, we don't know what it's going to be like. Obviously, when the pandemic's over, there's people who have been signed to NXT UK, and there's more people that have yet to be announced, but will be signing there. And once they get their schedule going and start doing more dates, I imagine more people. Plus, with the speaking out, there's a lot of people that have been kicked out of wrestling and leaving more spaces. And I think for most companies, it is it's a restart for everybody. So hopefully that'll give people like yourself that chance.
Yeah.
Like you said, working 200 dates in a year. Loads of people that are on these top internet promotions haven't worked that in 5 years.
Yeah. And sometimes, we were working 3 shows a day.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's another like work ethic for you as well. Is like, you're the one putting that ring up 3 times in that day. And I've seen guys come over from like America that like, oh, I've learned about All Star and this, that, and the other, and they have just broke down. They have said, I cannot do this. I can't do it because it's definitely like the things like that over the years have probably made me the way I am now. In that, how hard working it is because I love wrestling so much that it doesn't even feel like hard work.
Yeah.
It's just my life. I can't imagine not doing wrestling. I probably watch at least one wrestling match a day since I was probably like 3 years old. I can't. It's one of those things where you get guys who say, "Oh, I remember the day that I remember wrestling." I can't. It's gone that far back that it just in my mind I've always watched wrestling. The earliest memory I have of wrestling is it was Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. And I think it was like some one of my friends had like a tape that we used to watch, and then we used to watch the Hulk Hogan cartoon. Like I can't remember what it's called. Like I forgot what it was. Where there's like Hulk Hogan was a good guy and Roddy Piper was the bad guy. So it's in my DNA. It's there, and it's one of those things where it is literally my life. You've got things. You got your tier of things you like. It's wrestling, and then probably a close second is probably Liverpool Football Club. They're the 2 things, but wrestling will be
Wrestling good, Liverpool.
Not at the moment anyway, but that one. But literally, that's just, and it's not even. This is no gimmick. I think about wrestling 24/7. I hit, when my alarm clock goes off, there's sometimes I really don't want to get up, but then I think in my mind, well, you like, I really don't want to get up, and then I'm like, well, if you don't get up today, then you're missing a step forward in your goal. So you need to get your ass up, and you need to get this done. And and now it's got to the point where I've been doing it that long that the fire's just in me all the time. There's no, when you start like an ember, you've got to blow on it all the time. No, this fire rages 24/7, and it's getting up at 2 o'clock. It's easy because I know for a fact that I'm getting up for a reason.
Nah, definitely, and hopefully, like somebody is going to be listening to this and thinking, actually, we'll give you the chance, or tweet their like local promotion of, hey, check this guy out, and hopefully, like, don't know when wrestling will be back to normal. I guess, like, who knows, but hopefully it's not going to be too long, and get back to work, I guess. And
it got to the point where when it first closed down, I was very itching to get back. And it was when is it? And then the summer went, and when the summers are just the best times. So not having the summer last year was heartbreaking. But I've kind of got to the point where I'm at peace with it now, and I'm just going to build myself. It's kind of like I was saying. It's kind of like every wrestler has had an injury and has a chance. You remember when like Triple H like tore his quad, and then he comes back, and everyone's got that chance to like go away and come back hotter than ever. And you've got a chance to transform yourself. You can have ideas of what you want to. You can come back and you've learned a new hold, or you've got a new finisher, or you've got a new kind of persona about yourself and stuff like that. It's. I think this is what we need. Wrestling needed, because the fans were spoilt to the point where I remember watching a match. It was James Drake. It was in the first NXT tournament, and I love JD, so I was really happy for him. I was watching this match, and the crowd was, rather than watching the match, he was singing about what he had on his pants. Like, they were making a comment on his pants. Like he had like a face on it. I can picture the face, but I can't really describe it. It was just kind of like his face, like his kind of, do you remember what it was? And I just thought,
his own face on his ass.
Yeah. And they were like making this chant, and I was like, and the crowd wasn't into the match. The match was really good, and they made it seem really awful because they weren't watching it. They were too busy, taking a mick out of what he had in the short. I was like, come on, guys, this isn't the time to, you're not trying to get over. These guys are. So, have a little bit of respect for him. So hopefully, fans have come away and they've gone, oh, you know what, everything's been taken away from us here. So when we come back, let's make sure we're filling houses. We're getting behind like wrestlers, because the fans really are. They are lovely people. I mean, look at people who they get injured and they can't work, and they set up GoFundMe pages and stuff like that. That's like, you can't see that. Like, you don't see that in any other sport. So the fans are definitely special. But I just think sometimes that they're just doing the wrong things at the wrong time for me. And they're really missing out on appreciating what's in front of them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I've got to agree. And I think hopefully people are going to start appreciating it a lot more. And even for wrestlers, I think a lot of the workers just got up, did it, whatever. But then because you've not done it for so long, it's going to be like, actually, you know what, it's going to be cool when we're back. And I think the atmosphere for yourselves in the locker room, and it is going to be like everybody's just being injured and coming back, and everybody's just...
like people are kind of going to they're going to refine wrestling again. It's like the first time you turn on the channel and you see wrestling for the first time, like, whoa, like it's always going to be new stuff. They haven't watched like new independent matches because there isn't any.
Yeah.
So they've had nearly 12 months of absolutely nothing. So when it comes to the point, it's literally like, you're rediscovering it again.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. And hopefully a lot of people are gonna start appreciating it and get behind like the British wrestling. I know some people are still being as negative as they want, but I think just like we've got a few different companies cropping up, like in the like work of everything that's gone on, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's the speaking out, and the wanting to do things the right way, and hopefully that's gonna be a fresh approach as well to things. And I'm excited to see what will happen when everything can go back to the way it was.
There was one thing that really annoyed me before the pandemic hit is, you get promoters and they'd import these these old WWE guys or these American guys, and they're forking out thousands of pounds. Like, they're not even getting £1,000 on a gate, and they're just paying for like one guy. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, what are you going to do after that? Because now, if you get, let's say you get like Chris Masters on, like Chris Masters are doing, all right, okay, that show, you filled you filled the hall, you got your capacity. But what are you going to do your next show? You're going to bring Chris Masters in again. There's going to become a time where you can't focus on Chris Masters or, whoever used to get brought over, MVP or Matt Riddle. You can't focus on these people, especially in a time like this, where people can't travel.
Yeah.
There's probably promoters are going, oh, well, I haven't got anyone here. But they've had these guys who they could have been pushing to really be big stars. It's British wrestling. Like, yeah, we can have like the imports, and it's good because they're like kind of these matches where you go, oh, imagine if so and so, wrestled, this guy. It'd be such like a dream match. But there's they're getting these guys in, and I remember it was at a show and they had Matt Riddle on against MVP. I was like, this isn't doing anything for no one. Like, this is the main event, so all the British guys at a British wrestling show are on the undercard, and the headline is two Americans, and I was like, that's not right.
I always remember
at least split them up and put them with two British guys.
Yeah, I always remember Billy Gunn vs Hardcore Holly happening a couple of years ago in the UK.
Tell you what, you just have to go on the WWE Network and type in Hardcore Holly and see. You could see a Billy Gunn go against Hardcore Holly like 20 times on there if you really wanted to. So it's not a new match, that.
Yeah, and it's one of those where, like, again, I know full well one company had sold out, so they'd sold all the tickets. They had a few imports on the show, and they'll have the meet and greets and hopefully recoup as much as they can there. And then a former WWE wrestler that's now back there became available.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I've already advertised my shirt. I've already sold all the tickets, so there's no more money to be made unless they're going to make it on meet and greets off this one person, which I can't imagine they would for flights and fee. But they booked him anyways.
Yeah.
Spent a few grand flying in from America just to say, I've
I'm on the show, yeah. And I just think that's the wrong way of looking at it. And that's kind of like this, it's that quick, it's like that, I don't even know there's a word for it. It's just that like quick, impact straight away, But if everything's this quick impact, there's going to become a time where you can't do it and you're going to dip. Like, yeah, your sales are up. Yeah, that's great, but there's going to become a time where it dips.
And the
like
company has.
In the pockets. You've got to recruit stars. And the funny thing is, you've got people like Eddie there. You got people like Joey there. You got people like the Sheik. Like these guys, the Sheik's, there's, he looks like $1 million. And, he's someone you can really hate. Like, why isn't that guy? Yeah. Why isn't that guy everywhere? Why isn't that guy that, holding, gold round his waist in other places? And it's like that with Eddie Ryan. There's your guys there. You could probably pull in the same. It's like we're in that show. It's funny, like, because the same show where Matt Riddle was on with MVP, Eddie Ryan was on. No one's wearing a Matt Riddle t-shirt. No one's wearing an MVP t-shirt. They're wearing Eddie Ryan t-shirts. Yeah. So it just shows that, like, they think that's how booking a show is, but it's not. That's just you're putting on a wrestling show there, and it may be successful and you may fill all the seats, but what are you going to do next time? And then here's another one for you. Let's say the import comes and beats your top British guy. The American guy's going back to America. The British guy's still got to be in his company. What are you doing? Like, you can't just beat him flat in the middle of the ring, because next show he's just you've kind of essentially turned him into a jabroni. Like, oh yeah, he's our biggest wrestler. Here's our biggest guy from Britain. Oh, and here comes a guy from America. Oh, we beat him. Oh, well, he's big for us, but he's not as good as him. Like,
exactly. I think it's when you see one come over and they're going to be facing the champion of that promotion, but it's a non-title match.
Yeah.
So you know full well what's happening.
Exactly.
Champ's taking the pin, but they can't change the belt because the guy's not coming back.
Yeah. Or sometimes they even put the belt on him, and I'm like, what happens if, and that, let's say he signs for Impact, and he's not coming, or let's say he can't come back. Let's say because let's face it, flying from America to England, it's not a quick, it's not just jumping on the train to get here. It's a long way. Yeah. You're putting the belt on this guy who could potentially not even be your show sometimes, and I've seen it happen before. The guy's been a champion and he hasn't been able to make it.
I think one that I'm trying to get it up on my phone just to be sure. Yeah, so the one person that comes to mind would have been Adam Cole when he was on the Independents.
Yeah.
And he came over and won the PCW Cruiserweight title.
Yeah.
The PCW Ring of Honor Weekenders. And he won it on night 1, defended it on night 2, defended it on night 3. And then I think it was about 7 months later, they finally strip him because he's not come back to the UK.
Exactly. And I mean, but it just makes kind of like, it just doesn't set a good example for your wrestling company that's what you've got to do. Because you don't want to be stripping guys, because we know that Adam Cole isn't going to make every PCW show. Yeah. Because Adam Cole probably isn't going to want to fly all the way to England to wrestle a PCW show. He's probably going to want a string of shows. So he's like, right, okay, I'll do PCW on Friday. Now I need to fill Saturday, Sunday to make it even be worth me going. And if they can't, obviously they offered them 3 nights there, which is great. But Adam Cole's going to go. So I'm going to come there on Friday, stay over. I'm going to do the show on Saturday. And then I've got to get a flight home on the Sunday morning. And then I've probably got like another show, or I could stay over here in America and I could do 1 show Friday, 1 show Saturday, 1 show Sunday, and earn exactly the same amount of money. So they need to understand the logistics of what the wrestlers thinking as well, rather than what they want.
Credit to PCW though. I think they've changed their structure and their strategy, and I think they've started promoting more of this younger talent. We've seen Shake; he's done quite a lot of stuff there, and it took them to that time to invest, and you don't get it with all the companies. And again, like use the academies.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the UK got started. I mentioned it earlier. People got taken in, and I always remember with NGW, for example, to an internet fan, NGW is shit, rah, 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 rah. But similar to All Star, NGW, when they'd run in Hull, they're getting 1,000 fans.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
1,000 fans, and the main event had been Nathan Cruz and Matt Myers.
Mm-hmm.
No internet darling or whatever like that, and everybody's invested. And they brought in Will Ospreay for one show, for one match, and it was against Robbie X, who's vastly underrated in my opinion.
Yeah, I know Robbie.
Barely anybody cheered for Will. Half of them didn't know who he was because it wasn't that audience. Everybody was just cheering for Robbie. And if you build your stars, and Will's regarded as one of the best in the world right now, but people wanted Robbie.
Yeah.
If you build your stars, it's a sustainable business.
It's funny because I remember when Adam Cole worked for Brian. This was years and years, and I mean, I'm talking probably well over 10 years. I don't think I was wrestling, or I might have been wrestling, but not for very long. And people didn't know. But I think back then, I don't think Adam Cole was as big as he was now.
Oh.
But I remember, there's a funny. If you got Will Ospreay on an All-Star Wrestling show in the theatre, there's only going to be a handful of people who's going to know who Will Ospreay is. They're just going to think he's just a normal, wrestler. Like they're not going to know that he's a big star in New Japan and in America and stuff like that. They're not going to have a clue. And that's kind of like, it's kind of shows that it's funny that it's the same sport, but there's such a divide. And like, there's some people who don't even know who Will Ospreay is, where if you go on the independents, they know exactly who he is. And you've got a guy there like Robbie X, who's, he's not as big a star as Will, but they're behind him because he's the guy that it's like, I could imagine if you put Will Ospreay on with Dean Allmark on an All-Star Wrestling show, they're going to be chanting for Dean and not Will Ospreay, 100%.
Nah, definitely agree. But no, hopefully things will change and like the business side will come and
it's not broke. It's not as broke as people think it is. It can be fixed. I just think we just need to go back to basics a little bit for me, in the way of just look at your roster. And I know people have wrestling academies, but people are putting students on when they're not ready, and they're putting them on every show, and maybe it's probably because the people who's training them probably doesn't even know, what they're training them, how they're training them. So they're like, oh yeah, he can do, he did this amazing corkscrew moonsault, get him on the first show. Like, that's it. But with wrestling, you need to know why. It's good knowing the moves, but why are you doing them?
Yeah.
Where have you got to do them? Because I tell you what, there's some matches that I've done where the biggest move I've done is a suplex, and it's 15 minutes. It's a 15-minute match, and the biggest thing we've done is a suplex, and the crowd are going absolutely nuts. And there's times where I've beaten the guy and they've cheated to win. I thought they were going to burn the bloody theatre down. Like, I thought they were going to mob me. There's times where I've had to run backstage and fight the hand. Like, it's like Walking Dead, and all the hands are coming behind the door, and I'm like trying to shut it. Like, that's literally how bad it's got. And I didn't do a corkscrew moonsault. No one didn't drop anyone on the head. No one did a suicide dive. It was just a storytelling match where there was this guy who's a prick, and then there's this guy who everyone likes. We have a match. Through the match, the emotions get built. Everyone gets emotionally invested in the good guy, and then I just take it from them because I'm an arsehole, and they do go nuts. It's like I took the grandmother's purse, That's how literally how bad it was. And people don't know that that's wrestling.
Yeah.
It's not, doing moves. That's where the wrestling is. That's it's the psychology of wrestling, if you get what I mean. People know how to do the moves, but they don't know why they're doing the moves and where these moves can be put, where you're going to get the most reaction from them.
Yeah, definitely. I've got to agree. But no, like, first off, just want to thank you. It's been class just talking. I think we've been going about an hour and just shy of an hour and 50.
Oh, really?
For the
Wow,
show,
time.
yeah. So
No, thank you very much. No, these are the things that I need to just help me just to get out there, because it is frustration, but for me, and trying to, get the word out there. And I see guys, they're on all the shows, and I'm not bitter towards them. More power to them. Because I know it's my time's coming.
yeah,
And like, hopefully this is where the door opens up, and it's like what I say with Lewis, you've given me a chance here, and that's all I need. So like, I'm forever grateful for you for allowing me to come on and do this.
nah, man, it's your story. Like, I'm just a person asking the questions, and
Award-winningly asking the questions.
I need to make that a gimmick, don't I?
I know, yeah. You need to get a t-shirt, yeah.
Just wear a crown and that. But no, like, and again, I can speak to like some other people that I know that do shows as well, and try and get you on theirs just to try and get your name out there a lot more.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's not a gimmick. I know I can be like a really big star. I just need to be given a chance. Like it's kind of one of those things where it's just like, my journey to get to this point now is, I don't regret anything, because I know that I've built up everything for so long that when the time comes, I'm ready and I've got everything.
Yeah.
I haven't, got halfway and then things start coming, and I don't know everything. Now I think I'm the full package, and I've got everything that I need to get me to, like, the big, to the big names, and to really get my name out there. So
Yeah.
my whole career and the story that I've told, I don't regret any of it. And I'm glad that it's come out this way, because this is how my story should have gone. This is how it was always going to be. It's if you believe in fate, that's what it is, fate. So now, after lockdown, this is the next point now. It's time to really hit the ground running. And I remember Dean coming on here, and he said, like, if Tyson Taylor gets given a chance, we'll be a force to be reckoned with. And I think that's probably the best description of what I am going to be, is as I'm going to be a force to be reckoned with once I get given the chance, and once that ball starts rolling.
100%, mate. So where can people find you across social media?
I've got Facebook. It's Too Cruel Tyson Taylor on Facebook. It's Tyson Taylor 101 on Instagram. I do have a Twitter, but I don't go on it because I really don't know how Twitter works. If you look me up on YouTube, Tyson Taylor on YouTube, there's loads of matches that I've got on there. With guys, there's a multi-scale match on there, cash wheeler match, Nathan Cruz, El Ligero, Dean Allmark, James Mason, all my matches. So, if you don't believe me when I say that I've probably wrestled near enough everyone that's been going, then just, check my YouTube library out, and you'll see that, I have been around a long time. I've been hiding away, but now the dragon has come out the cage and the cave, and he's ready. He's going to start, spreading fire everywhere on the village.
Excited to see it, man. And I'll put all the things in the description below so everybody can check that out. Make sure you do go follow him, and I'll make sure you get on Twitter just to retweet it, of course. And but no, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Make sure you do go follow Tyson Taylor across all social media platforms. Hit like, hit subscribe. Tyson, thanks again, man.
Cheers. Thank you for having me.
Until next time.
Friday morning.